Where did you get your love of history?
I always, growing up, was really interested in history. I had a grandfather in particular who's still around, who would take me to historical sites. I remember him taking me to the Alamo when I was a little kid, and San Jacinto in Texas. And I think it probably began with him, and he was a big Civil War buff, and so the Civil War became sort of a first love, and then he had been in World War II, and so World War II became a natural study of mine, a natural interest of mine. And so I think, you know, for young kids, it's very important for parents and grandparents to read to them, to encourage them to read, to take them to historic sites, and to really instill in them a love of the country and a love of the country's history, because it is a great history. It's the greatest history in the world, and it deserves to be remembered, and it deserves to be told. And I hope the next few years of my life I can maybe do some more books and help tell some more of it.
Tell us a little bit about your philosophy of actually doing history, the research, the writing, the mechanics of bringing an idea to life.
Well, I mean, I start with the actual research itself, although it's not very formulaic. I mean, I'll research and find a document that I think is really interesting, and I might go ahead and start writing it. I might go ahead and start opening a chapter that I think that document might fit well into. And then, of course, as you're researching it, you're finding new things, you're coming across new documents. As I mentioned, you start in one place thinking you're going to do Little Rock, and you become fascinated by the soul searching that goes on by the chief executive, and so you begin to shift your research, and you begin to shift your story. And so it's a very organic process for me, and the research and the writing really goes hand in hand. Now, once all of the research is done, then I sort of exclusively focus on the writing, but I've already done some of it along the way. I have sort of a mental design, although I'm not one to really write out a detailed outline, but I have a sort of a mental picture of where the story's going to go, and then I start writing it, and I try to have a goal each day during the writing process. I try to do about 1,000 words a day. Now, that's not to say that I always get there. Sometimes I do less, sometimes I do more, but that way you at least have a plan, and you kind of can see progress over time, and you don't feel overwhelmed by the enormity of doing, in this case, 120,000 word manuscript. So it's not very formulaic, it's very organic, but it seems to work well, and that's the way I do it.
At 1,000 words a day, you're talking about a book every year. Is it your goal to create a book every year?
It'd be nice, although I have to have a day job and pay bills, so that takes up some of my time right now. So, but yeah, I'd like to do more books, and I try to make time for it, and I think that hopefully I can do more going forward.
You did so much research on Eisenhower, and I guess my question for you is, you don't seem to be totally sick of your topic, which is an accomplishment right there. What is the great unanswered question in your mind about Ike after doing all this research about him? What do you want to know still that you don't know?
The one thing that really fascinates me about him, and it's not really an issue of something we don't know, it's just I'd like to know more about it. Eisenhower in many ways is the first president to really appreciate that we lived in a very different world, that we lived in a nuclear age. And Eisenhower's Cold War policy very much was dictated by his understanding of the fact that though he very liberally talked about using military force and even using nuclear weapons, he was aware that we lived in a world where that could no longer happen. And so it'd be really fascinating. I mean, I wish I could go back in time and interview him. It'd be really fascinating to know, as he's formulating policy, as he's dealing with the Soviets, what was his thinking as far, and what did it feel like to sort of be in this bind, to know that he had to stand strong against the Soviets, he had to talk about using all the weapons at his disposal, as he did publicly in press conferences, but yet also realizing, as he said, that if we did have a nuclear exchange, the next day we'd all be grubbing for worms. I mean, what was that like to be the chief executive in a whole new world, internationally and globally, with the Soviets now having equal weapons? And I just think that would be really fascinating if someone could shed some light on the soul searching that must have gone on as he's trying to wage policy and put on a very strong front for the world, but yet aware of the limitations of policy at the same time. I think that would be a fascinating conversation to have with him, to find out more about that, and I just think that that's something I'd be really interested in knowing more about.
You mentioned last night very briefly something about the farewell address. What's going on with this whole military-industrial complex stuff in the farewell address?
Well, I mean, I think to some extent it's misinterpreted. I mean, Eisenhower had a very, I almost want to say ambivalent relationship with the military as president. But again, it goes back to his understanding of the new world that we lived in. Eisenhower believed that the days of conventional warfare were essentially over, that the days of having a big Gettysburg battle with hundreds of thousands of conventional army soldiers would never happen again, because now you had all of these new weapons that were much easier to produce and much easier to fire, and you didn't have to send your own men into harm's way. So he was very skeptical of the future of sort of a conventional military, and that's why he came up with the new look defense posture, which was investing more money in nuclear weapons and sort of spending less on ships and tanks and artillery. And this, of course, in some ways put him at odds with a lot of the military brass. So he had a very, as I say, somewhat difficult relationship with him as president, precisely because he was trying to move the military into the future, into a new posture, into a new direction. And the military at that time very much was romantic, and I think wanted to hold on to the military ways of the past, and wanted funding for their troops, and wanted funding for their conventional equipment. And so there was always this sort of tension before them. And I think when you look at his farewell address in those terms, it looks a little different. He's not just saying that the military can't be trusted, or that the contractors are out to make a fortune at taxpayers' expense. He really, in my opinion, is in some ways hearkening back to the earlier battles of his administration when he was trying to create a new military for a new era. And I think he basically was right about that.